Hello, my name is Marcin Przasnek and you're watching Flash News. We begin with the coronavirus update. More field hospitals will be phased out in the coming weeks. The number of occupied COVID beds has dropped by 50% in the last 2 weeks. The number of new coronavirus infections has also decreased by half compared to last week.
Although they can only register since yesterday, here already tens of thousands of 16 and 17-year-olds have their vaccination date. Everything went smoothly. The only thing I needed to know was my health security number and zip code. The whole procedure is the same as for adults. The only change is the need for parental consent. Doctors convinced that it is worth it. We have many examples in our clinic when we have had a severe course of disease with children, so I encourage all 16 and 17-year-olds to get vaccinated. Starting next Tuesday, all people with moderate disabilities will be able to get vaccinated at mass vaccination centers out of line. In total, more than 16 million doses have already been administered in Poland. More than 11.5 million people have received at least one dose, and the number of fully vaccinated has exceeded 4,600,000. I got vaccinated so that my wife would live a long life, because this wife is like a treasure. We're getting more vaccinations every week. In the last week, over 2 million. The more people with viral resistance, the less occupied the COVID beds. In 2 weeks, nearly half have become vacant. More and more hospitals can get back to treating patients with other conditions. More temporary hospitals will slowly be phased out in May. A week ago, we identified more than 3,000 new infections. Today, it is almost 50% less. In some voivodeships, a few dozen of new cases. The Ministry of Health is focusing on identification and isolation of outbreaks of the Indian mutation of the virus. The ministry estimates that more than half of Poles already have immunity to the coronavirus. 55, maybe 60% of people are already immune either as a result of vaccination or getting sick. Poland has not made mistakes in the fight against the pandemic and is well prepared to deal with the virus, says the Director General of the World Health Organization in Poland.
And certainly it was a fantastic operation. I haven't seen, from entrance to exit, it was like 15 minutes.
Yesterday, older students returned to hybrid learning. In 2 weeks, all students will return to full-time learning. In addition to resuming full-time teaching, we are also engaging in some very important discussions about the future of the teaching profession. The Ministry of Education and Science is working to change the status of the teaching profession, including working hours and the pay system.
The Polish deal is a plan to bring Poland to a higher level of economic development, says the Prime Minister. Mateusz Morawiecki spoke today in Podkarpackie region, among others, about investments in hydrogen.
This is what the hydrogen locomotive being built by PESA Bydgoszcz will look like. 2 years ago, the company set up a special team to build this type of vehicle. The effects are already visible. Our vehicle will probably start this year. Hydrogen is to be the ecological fuel of the future. Poland is already the third largest producer of hydrogen in the EU. In Jasionka near Rzeszów, the Prime Minister announced creation of 5 hydrogen valleys. One of them is to be created in the Podkarpackie region. The development of hydrogen economy will make it possible to achieve climate neutrality over the years and also make it possible to maintain the competitiveness of the Polish economy. As part of the recently announced Polish deal, the government envisages subsidies for electric and hydrogen buses and cars. This is one of many assumptions of the project. The most important of these is to increase spending on healthcare, moving the income threshold to 120,000 zlotys and increasing the tax-free amount tenfold. More than 90% of pensioners will benefit from this solution. I am alone, there are fees and every penny is needed. On the other hand, people who have reached retirement age but still want to work will be able to count on a zero personal income tax. Government experts are clear. The changes in the tax system will mainly benefit people with lower incomes. This means, however, a slightly higher burden on higher earners, especially those earning more than 10,000 Polish zloty a month. The Polish deal restores elementary fairness because in the tax system the most burdened were those who earn the least and the least those who earn the most. A lot of space in the Polish deal was devoted to housing policy. It is supposed to encourage Poles to enlarge their families. It will be easier to build a house of up to 70 square meters, and the state will, among others, guarantee up to 100,000 Polish zloty as a known contribution for those taking a housing loan. The idea is very good. The government also wants to encourage people to return from immigration. Anyone who decides to do so next year or the year after will be able to deduct 50,000 zloty from their tax base. The purpose of change is to improve the quality of life. The Polish deal is supposed to realize Polish aspirations and maybe something more difficult, Polish dreams. The first solutions are expected to be introduced later this year.
This will be a new corridor of gas supplies to the European market. The construction of Baltic Pipe is in full swing. Drilling of the tunnel in Pogorzelica, which is a land part of the project, has started.
work at the bottom of the sea but also on land. In Pogorzelice and West Pomeranian Voivodeship, construction crews are digging under the dunes. The tunnel is being drilled so that when the ships that are going to lay the gas pipeline arrive, this gas pipeline will be pulled into the tunnel and connected to the gas pipeline that will already be laid in the land part. In total, Baltic Pipe will be almost 300 kilometers long. The key element of the pipeline will be its offshore section connecting Poland and Denmark. First gas deliveries are expected to reach Poland in autumn next year. Currently, annual gas consumption in Poland is about 20 billion cubic meters.
77 years ago, Poles conquered Monte Cassino in a heroic battle. The victory allowed to break through the German defensive Gustav Line, opening the way to Rome for allies. On Monte Cassino, the soldiers of the Polish army have shown that they are ready to make the greatest sacrifice in the name of freedom, said the Minister of National Defense, Mariusz Błaszczak, during the celebrations commemorating the anniversary of the battle.
The 77th anniversary of the victorious Battle of Soldiers from the Polish Second Corps was commemorated at Monte Cassino. On the 18th of May 1944, they conquered the legendary hill, which was heavily defended by the Germans. They fought for a free Poland. They distinguished themselves with extraordinary heroism. They achieved what others were not able to achieve. The memory of Polish soldiers is reminded by a historical path created by the Military Publishing Institute and financed by the Polish National Foundation. They gave their lives, gave what was most precious in the fight for the freedom not only of Poland but also of Europe. Conquering Monte Cassino by the Poles opened the way to Rome for allies.
The faithful remember Saint John Paul II. Today is the 101st anniversary of the birth of the Polish Pope. Celebrations were held, among others, in Wadowice, the hometown of Karol Wojtyła.
Here in this town of Wadowice, everything began. It all began here on Kościelna Street, where Karol Wojtyła was born on the 18th of May 1920. In the Basilica of the Presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Wadowice, a gratitude mass for the life of the Pope was held by Archbishop Marek Jędraszewski. The pontificate of John Paul II is still an important reference point for many people around the world. John Paul II speaks to us today in a special way about the importance of having God in our lives in the public space. An elite study of the thought and work of St. John Paul II has just begun at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome.
Miłosierny Panie.
And for a year now, hundreds of thousands of Poles have been uniting in prayer thanks to Polish television. Every day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, TVP transmits a chaplet to the Divine Mercy.
EU foreign ministers discussed how to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in the Gaza Strip. As you know, there has been an exchange of fire between Israel and the Palestinians for over a week.
The Israeli army in overnight raids on the Gaza Strip destroyed 15 kilometers of tunnels used for military purposes by the Palestinian radical organization Hamas. 90 rockets were fired at Israel from the Gaza Strip. Palestinians reported that during the overnight bombardment, Israeli forces destroyed one of the clinics that housed the enclave's only laboratory for coronavirus testing. Spain is sending troops to Ceuta, a Spanish administrative unit on Moroccan territory. It has been the destination of thousands of Moroccan migrants for several days. They got here by swimming or walking along the seashore at low tide. There may be more than 6,000 of them. The Spanish Prime Minister said that such a large influx of refugees from Morocco is a serious problem for the entire EU. About 100 employees of the Moscow Metro lost their jobs because they took part in protests in defense of oppositionist Alexei Navalny. Such information was published by an independent trade union. In April, hackers published email addresses of people who declared participation in the demonstrations. Those released believe that the Metro authorities punished them for supporting Navalny, although no one officially mentioned it. In Madrid, an infant underwent a heart transplant from a donor with a different blood type. This is the first such transplantation in the world. For 2-month-old Nayara, the transplant was the only chance. Serious heart disorders were already observed in the fetal period, and the birth accelerated the development of the disease. Nayara is still in hospital, but her condition is improving. And here's another idea on how to help those cut off from the world by the disease. Virtual technology is set to change the harsh reality of cancer patients and transport them from hospital rooms to their dream places. The Rocket Oncology Foundation and the University Clinical Center in Katowice have launched a project using VR goggles to add mental health treatment to body treatment. Such technology can help in pain management. For patients wary of illness, glasses allow to see another dimension.
The astronomer Copernicus, or a conversation with the god. This is one of the most famous works of Jan Matejko, which has just arrived at the National Gallery in London. The exhibition will run until the 22nd of August.
Jan Matejko is the national painter of Poland. He paints the big subjects from Polish history. He celebrates a great Polish hero like Copernicus. We don't have Polish painting in the National Gallery. It's a first encounter And I think Jan Matejko and the Copernicus picture is the right way to start.
W tym obrazie jest zarówno coś, co opowiadało.
There is something in this picture that tells both about Poland, its struggles, discussions around identity, which are very interesting, especially in this day and age, but it also has something of universalism because it's about Copernicus, who is an interesting figure and well known here in the UK.
Ciekawą postacią i znaną tutaj w Wielkiej Brytanii.
Among many institutions and establishments opening in France after the lockdown, there is also a special place. These are the gardens of Giverny, Normandy, which were an inspiration for the famous impressionist Claude Monet.
In this magical place, you can dispel all your sorrows, even those related to the coronavirus pandemic. Claude Monet, who spent part of his life in Giverny, knew about the excellent effect of this climate on the soul. It was an inspiration for him, the evidence of which can be seen not only in the house where the painter lived, but also in the local museum of Impressionism. The bridge, the vegetation and the atmosphere, all just as Mr. Monet painted it. On the occasion of her 50th birthday, Queen Maxima of the Netherlands invited the television to her office at the Hague Palace. In an interview, she talked about the joys and hardships of a monarch's life. Maxima is Argentinian. When almost 20 years ago William Alexander, the then heir to the Dutch throne, decided to marry her, not everyone liked the idea. However, the chosen one quickly won the hearts of her people and, despite the passage of time, did not lose their sympathy. Travelers between Tennessee and Arkansas will have a bit of an uphill battle for a while. The bridge over the Mississippi River connecting the two states is closed until further notice. Cracks have appeared on one of the spans. A special commission will investigate the cracks and remove them. Over 35,000 vehicles cross the bridge daily. Shipping on the Mississippi has also been halted. Ruined houses, devastated residences, even palaces. There is no shortage of such buildings in Lebanon's capital Beirut, a city torn by conflict. For British photographer James Curran, they are a source of inspiration. He sees in them the beauty of the old world. Even if it is not visible at first glance, the eye of the camera can reach deeper and extract the glow from the ruins.
And that's all for today. Thank you for being with us and see you next time.